Hi, I'm Bailey, and in this video you will learn about what happened during the Watergate trials and what the Watergate trials were. In order to learn about the Watergate trials, though, you have to actually learn about the break-in. So we're going to look into what each person's part was in the break-in and what happened during the trials, and how the American public felt about these trials and how they should have been handled. It was a very controversial time in American history. President Nixon was really paranoid about his re-election. So paranoid that he formed a special investigators unit called the Plumbers to clog the leaks in government files. Nixon's Attorney General, John Mitchell, seen here, and Gordon Liddy, seen here. We'll go ahead and recircle him. Planned the break-in, as they were both former CIA agents and had the training to do so. They also had help from this guy, E. Howard Hunt. He was also a former CIA agent, and we see him here during the actual trials. Alright, moving on, we're going to talk about the plumbers. No, not that kind of plumber. These plumbers, the people who were supposed to clog those leaks in the government files, these are the people who actually broke in. From left to right, we have James McCord, Vergrico, he has a weird name, Gonzalez, Frank Stigritz, Enrique Martinez, and Bernard Barker, all of which had been former CIA agents and had the training to break in and wire the Watergate offices. All of these people, except for Nixon, were originally put on trial. So we're going to put a big X on him for the time being. On January the 8th, 1973, so let's write that down for you. There we go. And E. Howard Hunt, this guy, remember? He pleaded guilty to 6 counts, stating that no higher-ups were involved on January the 11th, 1973. 4 days after Hunt pleads guilty, these 4 plumbers also plead guilty to the charges put upon them. It wasn't until the 30th that Liddy and McCord got convicted, as they had pleaded innocent to all charges.
Bailey, are you online?
These 4 plumbers also plead guilty to the charges put upon them. It wasn't until the 30th that Liddy and McCord got convicted, as they had pleaded innocent to all charges. McCord here, he thought he was sly, so he waited 2 months until his conviction had been done, so 2 months after his conviction, and he writes his judge a letter claiming that pressure had been put on the plumbers to stay quiet. This letter, in fact. And it goes on about the different people and how people had put pressure on the plumbers in order to keep them from giving names and information. People such as John Mitchell and President Nixon. So we can take that X off of him because now he's involved. On May 18th, the televised hearings began. John Dean testified that Nixon was part of the cover-up, and the moment that Dean says Nixon was involved, Nixon orders that there will no longer be any taping in the Oval Office. He also refused to surrender the pre-existing tapes. Later on the day of August 29th,
Nixon loses his first court battle, and the judge orders him to hand over the tapes. A couple months later, well, quite a few months later, April 30th, the tapes are released to the public, and the public is absolutely shocked at the profanities within this tape, because with every cuss word there was, they would fill it in with explicit word, and it would say just that every time something happened. This video is an example of those televised hearings. As you will see, Sam Ervin, North Carolina senator at the time, was at the lead of these hearings in the people's attempt to bring the White House down.
Now, from our studios in Washington, here is ABC News correspondent Frank Reynolds.
Good morning. At this hour, a select committee of the United States Senate is about to begin public hearings on something called Watergate. 1 year ago today, Watergate was just an address, a rather fancy, expensive address in this capital city, but now it has come to symbolize much more. The word crisis is perhaps too mild to apply to Watergate. President Nixon's White House has been shaken. Indeed, the entire executive branch of the government has been jolted by the continuing accusations and revelations. Most of them, it must be kept in mind, not yet proved. 7 men, only 7 men, have been convicted for their part in the burglary. We see now Senator Sam Ervin, who is the chairman of the select committee, engaging in some banter there with the photographers who are clustered all about him. Senator Ervin will be the man wielding the gavel during these hearings, and he is about to do that right now. Senator Ervin has called these hearings the most important investigation ever entrusted to the Congress. He is well known as perhaps the foremost authority on the Constitution in the United States Senate, a former judge. There goes the gavel, and the Watergate hearings are underway.
I think, Sam, you got copies of the resolution. Thanks for putting in the record. You got copies of the resolution in the record. The committee will come to order. Today, the Select Committee on Presidential Campaign Activities begins hearings into the...
There are still people today who are upset about the Watergate trials, and they have the right to be. Our government got a little bit paranoid and decided to go looking into people's personal business just to make sure that Nixon won. It wasn't going to be a fair election if they went in and looked at what people were thinking, got inside their heads. And the televised hearings were a way of letting the public know that this is what Nixon was doing. This was also a way that they used when they released the tapes that were recorded of the Oval Office. And this shocked the people because at the time, people didn't use the profanities that they use today, and they were hearing the man who ran their country and they respected so highly saying these words and using this language that none of them would have ever pictured him saying. This was such a large part of American history. It was kind of like showing where our government could fail. Everyone had thought that it was such a good system up until now, where all of a sudden the government's almost turning against us. This is where people get these references of they're looking at our phones, they're looking at our computers, don't get online, the government will see it. It's because of this trial, because of this break-in that did this. It was such a big deal, they even put it in Forrest Gump, which is personally one of the greatest American movies ever. You might have your own opinion, it's fine. It's just mine. I'd like to thank ABC News. You guys have a great resource, which is what that little Watergate trial video came from. So if you want to watch it for yourself, the whole thing is on abcnews.com, and just look up Watergate trials, it'll come up. The pictures and information about all of the burglars and planners came from watergatefiles.com, and you guys have a great day in history.